Thank you with Cheryl Pounder, Frankie Corrado, Jeff O'Neill, and Darren Drager. The one guarantee about this generation's Toronto Maple Leafs is, even through their best intentions, a gutsy effort to come back and force overtime in Game 7 against the Boston Bruins, it always is that they find a way to lose in the most painful, excruciating way possible for themselves and for their fans. Let's start with the end of this one. How did Pastrnak get so open?
It's crazy, James, how the whole game, every inch of ice was contested. There was nowhere to go out there. We were talking, watching it, saying, this is going to be a shot from the point, a battle in front. You get to overtime in Game 7, and the floodgates open, the ice opens up for David Pastrnak. It's a set play in the neutral zone, an unbelievable cross dump by Lindholm. He knows he's flying. You've got Marner, Riley, Lyubushkin, and Nylander all tracking back, and no one picks up the most dangerous player on the ice. Another key player in this goal is watch the goaltender. In that league, if you want to sit on the goal line with an elite player coming in, you're going to have zero chance to stop the puck. He just had no room for error there when you're backed up that far. Look how close he is to the goal line. A good player is going to make that move and score every time for the winner.
This series is an opportunity wasted for the Toronto Maple Leafs because David Pastrnak scores the series-winning goal, but as far as his performance throughout the rest of the series, it wasn't what we've seen from David Pastrnak. There is one constant when the Leafs play the Bruins, is that David Pastrnak is going to own this team. And throughout the course of this series, the Leafs found a way to keep him at bay, but in the biggest moment, he found a way to break through and ultimately push the Bruins on to the next round.
And how about his coach calling him out and him responding to it with his best game of the series?
So they lose technically on that goal in overtime, but let's face it, they really lost by falling behind 3-1. Those two home losses in Game 3 and 4, and particularly that woeful effort in Game number 4. Is that where the Leafs lost?
That's what it boils down to. I mean, 3 of the 7 games were lousy. Let's just call it what it is. And you can throw the first game into that equation as well. Sheldon keep talking about 3 and 4. They weren't good enough. Austin Matthews gets hurt in Game 3. He finishes Game 3, starts Game 4. He then gets pulled, doesn't play the third period of Game 4, and then misses 5 and 6. I mean, they faced so much adversity, but a lot of it was self-created.
It seemed like Austin Matthews coming out of the lineup, it just something woke up with these guys. They understood the commitment level necessary to compete in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's crazy to think it's taken that long, all of 8 years, for them to wake up and say, oh, this is how you got to get it done in the playoffs. But if you go back to Game 3 and 4, good teams do not just hand over tickets to the other team and say, take these 2 W's and go back home.
No.
That's where the series was lost.
Well, and you mentioned it, there's the Game 5, 6, and 7, just working hard and fighting for position. All of
team,
those
Cheryl.
elements, such a different team. And it's a team you would like to see more, but you can't. You can't, because the ghosts of the past have haunted them to this point. And so you know that there's going to be change, whether it's in management, coaching, of course, the core 4. But it all stems from what they've done. But certainly this is a different team in terms of the last 3 games, but it wasn't consistent at the beginning of the series.
There's all these different excuses baked into this series. You didn't have Matthews. You didn't have Nylander. Your goaltender got hurt before Game 7. In a vacuum, you would look at that and say, you run it back again. But it's not a vacuum. It's been year after year that this group hasn't been able to get it done, and it's been different things, but it's ultimately comes back to the same thing. Power play can't score, 1 for 21 in this series, and you can't find a way to score at 5-on-5. And the Boston Bruins, a lot of average players on that lineup. You ask me, that's 3 third-line centers that they have. But the Leaf superstars still can't find a way to break through offensively.
And Mike Johnson always talked about it. Goaltending, everyone talks about penalty, whatever. He says they can't score enough to win games in the playoffs. And for all season long, all we do is marvel at what they do offensively, chasing 70 goals, 100-point seasons, all that stuff. And when it comes to crunch time, we talked about the space out there. There's none of it, and you got to find a way to fight through and do it. And again, they're offensively challenged, and they don't score enough. I never thought that would be the problem, ever.
And it's interesting because that's where all their money is, but it was their defense, I thought, that really exceeded the expectations on the blue line. You know, someone like Benoit, even McCabe, Edmondson did a great job, that leverage and just boxing out net front. So it's real interesting to see what's going to happen.
Well, you just said it. This group, the way they played the last 3 games, you'd love to see more of that.
Yeah.
If this was the second year of this core, then you'd say there's a lot to build on. But we know that's not the case. We know that change is coming. So How deep does it go? How swiftly does it happen?
Well, it'll start at the top, at least the forensic audit, right? We know that there's a new boss in town, Keith Pelley, the head of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. So, of course, there'll be some consideration to change when you look at Brendan Shanahan, the office that he's occupied. I doubt that happens. I think that you're looking more inside hockey operations because, look, the business model of the Toronto Maple Leafs is very, very successful. So you're talking about a coaching change. And unfortunately for Sheldon, he's a good coach. He'll coach again in the National Hockey League. He has not yet been able to lead this team over the hump, so he does have to accept some of that blame. But the majority of that blame goes to the core of the hockey club. And that's where I think Brad Treliving, still a new general manager in Toronto, is really going to put his stamp. So I do expect either Marner or Tavares to at least be approached. They have no move clauses. They have protection. But I do think that he's going to try and do something with that core.
I would be sure if you talked to Sheldon Keefe in a candid moment, he would say, I don't know what other pump-up speech to give these guys. I don't know what else different to say, that if you do this differently than last year, we can get it done. Because time after time, the players don't get it. And he probably doesn't even know what to say anymore. How many times can you go to war in the playoffs with some kind of different message? Hey, guys, if you try this, this will really work. Doesn't work.
You can try changing things externally, and that should happen because we have a large enough sample size. But right now, going forward, it's 34's team. Like, something needs to change internally, and maybe
You're
hand
saying
the
take
keys.
the C away from John Tavares, whether he's back or not?
It's his team, and it always has been his team.
No.
That can be your team. I don't necessarily agree with taking away a letter from a guy. You know, he still works his tail off. I mean, he takes a beating net front, leading by example. He may not like that he's not animated in the media or perhaps,
I don't
animated
think it's
on
about
the
any
ice.
of that. It's just about the team results and something different. It's got to be something different.
Well, I mentioned the pain. If you look at this, the way they've lost when they've gotten to all or nothing games in this era since 2013, it's nothing but L's in that right side column. 7 in a row in a winner-take-all game, the Leafs have gone down, and this one among the most painful as they get that close against the Bruins.